Welcome to the future of payroll and workforce management insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com, where I am your host. My name is Brent Skinner, and we are recording this episode from the exhibitor floor or the marketplace at PrismHR Live here in Denver/Aurora, Colorado at the Gaylord, a beautiful, beautiful resort. And my guest today is Mike DeLessio, who is Chief of Staff for PrismHR. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Brent. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today. We're going to talk about AI. Listeners might be thinking, oh gosh, another AI episode and an HR podcast. But trust me, this one is going to be really interesting. It's a little bit of a twist on things. Mike and I learned that you are also from New Hampshire, which is great. And there's two other folks at on the PrismHR team who are also from New Hampshire. That's the most people from New Hampshire I've ever met at a conference in HCM in 20 years.
Yeah, Brett, I think it's actually the most people that are allowed out of the state at one time, from New Hampshire. Yeah, I think we've depleted most of it.
Yeah, that's right. Who's left in New Hampshire right now? We're all here, right? So, as I like to start all these podcasts, I'd like to hear a little bit about your background. There are a lot of great stories in this space, getting into the PEO world, the HCM world. Tell us a little bit about that, Mike.
Yeah, sure, glad to. So I think when I look at what I want to do and kind of the career that I have, I like to focus on things that are impactful, right? So outside of work, I'm very heavy into volunteerism, both on the medical and the emergency service side. And so I think that's very impactful. You impact people's lives, in a positive way in their time of need. And if you look at, what I do for my career, right, I think payroll is extremely impactful, right?
Yeah.
So, you want to make sure that you're paid on time, that's paid accurately, you're not taken advantage of, right? You're given all the options you need to succeed in everyday life. And so payroll to me is a very impactful profession, right? Because you get to influence so many people's lives. So I've been with Prism for about 13 years, now. So I came over when it was FW Davison, right? way back when. And I transitioned in from the staffing, side, right? So staffing, CRM before that, and I worked for the Department of Defense, before that. So I think Department of Defense is the outlier, right? But I think CRM to staffing over to Prism payroll, right, is a natural progression.
Yeah. I agree with you. Payroll is so important. And we're going to talk about AI, but I just want to mention this. I think it's ground zero for the employee experience. It's so fundamental to the employee experience that they don't even notice it really unless it goes wrong. And then you have an immediate existential employee experience problem.
Yeah. So if you think about it, think about your first day at work, right? So you go through your onboarding, process. And so that's a key milestone, in starting your career. So you either have a very positive onboarding experience, which is one of the things for payroll, right, that we bring people through, or you don't, right?
Yeah.
So you want to start off on the good foot. So from the very beginning, it's a very impactful experience, and it's a very it's a function that requires a lot of trust, as well, right? So you're trusting somebody to be accurate, right? To do the payroll correctly, to kind of focus on the things that are important to you, and make offer the offerings, the supplementary kind of benefit offerings and things like that are important. So I think all of those things kind of wrapped together really contribute to the employee experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. You start your new job and you think to yourself, okay, how do I make sure I get my banking information in there right so I can get paid on time the first time? That's everybody's questions. Which payroll run am I on? Let's pivot to the topic today. So we were having the analyst briefing yesterday with Alex Campos, who is CEO of Venture HR, and then we have, I hope I got that right. Yes.
100%.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then Kevin Andrews, who is CTO and president of PrismHR or Venture HR,
Prism.
PrismHR.
Kevin's also the CTO of that.
Okay, great. So they provided a really good presentation, and we had some Q&A with the analysts. And one thing came up, and that's what we're going to talk about today is, your AI messaging is a little bit, it's a little bit different than what we're seeing across the industry in the HCM space. There's a lot of flash, and not that it's bad, but everyone's talking about agentic AI and it's AI this, AI that. It's all AI first, right? And there's definitely an argument for that. That's where we're kind of going as a civilization, but you folks take a little bit of a different approach. AI is not devoid from it's not absent from your messaging, but it's a little bit different. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think, start off by saying, AI is in our DNA, right? So it's a common thread that kind of runs through our applications. I think the messaging component is just a little bit different. And I think you hit on it when you first kicked it off. When I kicked off, the podcast, you said, "Oh no, not another AI," right? So
Exactly.
I think it's something that, that is groundbreaking. It's something that, it's our industrial revolution, right? So it's going to make a huge impact across the board. But with things like that, you often hear them too much,
Yeah.
right? And so if you hear that terminology too much, it can do a couple different things. One, if you're not technologically literate,
Mhm.
AI can be scary, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of talk about AI taking people's jobs, things like
Mhm.
that, right? There's a lot of talk about hallucinations, right? And AI, the trust element, with AI. So it's good for our customers, to understand that, we're embedding AI, we're very focused on it. But, they don't need to be experts in AI.
Yeah.
They don't need to know all the buzzwords, right? Or really, how it works, for them to leverage that and take advantage of it. Our model is more show it how it works in the application,
Mhm.
rather than, talk about kind of the buzzwords and AI in kind of a broader sense, right? And I think a big piece of that for us is really the force multiplier effect, right? So we see AI as augmenting, the work that, that customers are doing, so they can do more, with the staff that they have, right? So for us, AI doesn't, replace a person; it augments what they can do. So it takes that knowledge and skill, that they have, and allows them to leverage it on the more critical components, rather than, more, mundane, just kind of, monotonous tasks.
Yeah. Well put. Well put. Let's talk about the size of your typical. So obviously, Prism HR is used by PEOs, professional employer organizations, right? And it can be used directly by employers themselves as well, from what I understand. Um, but when it comes to the size of the employer, whether it's the PEO's client or the employer itself that's using Prism HR, is typically a smaller business, correct?
Correct. Our customers mostly service small to medium enterprises, so the SMBs.
Yes.
All right, so it's typically defined as under 200.
Okay.
Right, that's the kind of definition of an SMB. Now
Yeah.
we do have some customers that are much larger,
Mhm.
right, and some that are much smaller. Right,
Right.
single proprietor, service models. Um, but they service that smaller market, and so when we offer AI,
Yeah.
we're offering it at kind of three levels, right? So, we're a software, development firm. So we're consumer of AI, right? So we use it in our development, right, and building out our applications. We offer it to our customers, the CEOs and the service providers, and then it's offered to their customers, the SMBs.
Mhm.
Right. So there's three levels really of kind of AI interaction,
Mhm.
right, that we typically encounter with.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, thinking about this size of a company, like around, typically under 200 employees, right? When you think about what that kind of a company needs when it comes to their HCM, their HR and their payroll, right? It's more of sort of a visceral need, right? Maybe they're transitioning from where they were doing many very manually, possibly, and they need to and found out that they decided they wanted to engage with the PEO, maybe, right? Or they just want a solution that'll just kind of take care of the fundamentals, so that they just have less. they have more time on their hands because they don't have to do all this administrative stuff. Do you think that factors into what they're looking for, maybe not even thinking about when it comes to AI?
I think it is. I think it goes back to the, AI helping with the workflow. We're talking
Mm,
about an agentic event, embedded in workflows. Typically the customers of a PEO will be looking to use PEO services because they're not experts in HR, right? So they're outsourcing that HR function. Right. It's a co-employment model, right? Where they're outsourcing, that. And so they're looking for the more white glove service. They want to focus on their businesses. I think a lot of times when you're in that small to medium, kind of market,
mm,
you want to focus on growing your business, right?
mm,
That's what you're an expert in, right?
mm,
Whatever that business may be. So you want to outsource the functions that aren't kind of your direct line of sight
mm,
or really kind of embedded in your knowledge.
mm,
And so I think that's a key kind of, value proposition, for a company to go to a PEO.
mhm,
And so the same value proposition holds true for AI.
mhm,
They'd like to see that embedded in workflows to make
mhm.
their lives a little bit easier, a little bit more efficient, right? And a little bit quicker, right? To do a lot of the functions that do take time.
Yeah, and we had an impromptu sort of green room moment in the hallway yesterday when we talked a little bit about this, and this seems like a great segue where there's sort of these instances or these specific cases where the AI can come in handy, where it helps with the administrate to automate things and to make things easier. And I know we talked about auditing and super batching, that kind of stuff. Maybe you can give us a couple examples around that.
Yeah, so I think one of the examples that we talked about, and you
Mm,
probably saw in a couple of the breakout sessions,
yes.
here this week, it was around the audit, audit report or the audit functionality, which is AI, and that goes through when a service provider wants to run payroll, for a series of their customers, the SMBs, or all of them, right? They're running a super batch.
Mm,
And they want to be able to go through and look at any variances in
mm,
there, right? So I want to be able to run, payroll for a number of people, but I want to make sure it's accurate,
yeah.
right? So instead of going through, we have some customers that have a
Mm,
50-step check, right? That they go through. I'm going to spot check here. I'm going to spot check here. I'm going to spot check this number.
yeah.
I'm going to make sure that, that the variance
Mm,
between what I paid in my last payroll and what I paid in this one isn't off by over a certain percentage. And
mm,
so, the audit allows them to do that programmatically, right? So AI comes in and looks at it and says, all right, are there variances outside the tolerances that I
mm.
feel are acceptable? And if there are, flag them, bring me to the spot they are, and then I can look at those and make sure that the payroll that's going out is going to be accurate.
That's that's a huge time savings. Yeah.
And a trust element as well.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Thinking about the future, where this is going, right? So getting back to the messaging piece of it, which I find fascinating and I love, just thinking about, it's almost as if, tell me if I'm off base here, running a field, but it seems to me that you're kind of differentiating yourself by kind of holding back a little bit on the AI messaging, the window dressing around the AI messaging, right? You're almost differentiating yourselves by being the ones that are still communicating that more sort of a straightforward message about, this is a SaaS solution, this is for your PEO, this is going to. Do you think there's some of that going on?
No, there is. I think, a lot of our customers don't necessarily have an IT shop,
Yeah.
right? Internally, they're HR specialists, right?
Mhm.
So they know that area. We're payroll specialists.
Mhm.
That's our specialty. So, we don't want to cloud the message.
Mhm.
We provide, a very performant application, a very accurate application that they've trusted for over 20 years.
Yeah.
All right. And so we want to make sure that they understand that we are providing AI. We are keeping up with the times. We're using it internally. We're going to give you AI functionality to use internally at the service provider level and with their end customers.
Mm.
But we're not going to overburden you, with having to understand AI to be able
Right.
to consume that. So it's a little bit easier for them to consume.
Yeah. Kind of feeding it to them in digestible chunks and in functionality. Yeah. That's interesting. It's interesting to think about, 5 to 10 years from now, what the typical sort of customer uh, uh, target that you have will be thinking about and expecting in terms of an AI message or something else versus today.
Yeah, I think they're looking at, our customers, the PEOs
Mm.
are looking at efficiency,
Yeah.
right? So they want to be able to do more with the same staff that they have, right? They value the human in the loop interaction. As payroll is a tough thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you look at variances in payroll, if you've ever looked at the entertainment industry for
Yeah.
payroll, right? All the collective bargaining agreements and everything there. I think that's near the pinnacle of complexity
Yes,
on
it
the
is.
payroll side. Having AI kind of go through and generate something there is viewed as risky,
Mm.
right? So I think it's very good to go through and do a lot of back end processes,
Mhm.
bring those to a person, have them validate, and make sure that payroll goes out accurately.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe, handle some of the more mundane tasks, but those critical components, the variances,
Mm.
fraud detection, things like that. The human in the loop is critical on that. And I think our customers are going to continue, right, to want that interaction, but they're going to want to do more with the same amount of people. And that's kind of where the AI comes in. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well put. And I think, let's conclude the episode on that, Mike. That was very well put. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. It's been really fascinating.
Well, it's always great to talk to somebody else from New Hampshire. Right? So I
Agreed.
appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.